Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Austin, and today, thanks for joining in honor of Black History Month. We have four amazing panelists here, plus my co-facilitator, Alexis. And we'll just be discussing their experiences working in healthcare. However, I encourage you guys in the audience, to think about these things throughout your life, not just in healthcare, but in other areas as well. I'm an incoming first-year student. I'll be starting PA school in June. And then I'll let my co-facilitator, Alexis, introduce herself.
Hi guys, my name is Alexis Vincent. I am a year one student at Carver College of Medicine PA program. I'll be monitoring the chat throughout today's stream, so if you guys have any questions, feel free to just pop those in there, and I will do my best to get to them. Thanks for coming.
And then now the panelists, you guys can go ahead and introduce yourself. We'll start with Fabienne.
Okay. Hi guys, my name is Fabienne. I've been a PA for 2 years. I graduated December 2018. I currently work in pain management, and I have for the past year. I'm from South Florida, and that's where I practice now.
All right, Tony, you want to go ahead?
All right, so I'm Tony. I'm a PA in pediatric neurosurgery. I graduated in 2012 from University of Washington, and I'm in Orange County, California. I've been in pediatric neurosurgery going on 6 years, and in emergency medicine, moonlighting for the past 8 years. So I'm here to kind of give you what I have as far as Black history and being in medicine and being African American.
All right, Courtney, you want to go next?
How's everybody doing? I'm Courtney Camille. Some of you guys know me as Cam. I am a first-year PA student at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. Happy to give you guys all my experiences. Thank you for the opportunity.
And last but not least, Adanna.
So my camera is about to die very shortly, but my name is Adanna. I am also, I guess, known as Adanna the PA. I am a first-year PA. I just graduated in 2019. I'm practicing currently in trauma at a trauma hospital in the DMV area.
Awesome. So just to get us started, I just wanted to give you guys some facts to think about as we go through these questions, just to kind of get the gears going. So according to a Smith and Jacobson research article titled Racial and Gender Disparities in the Physician Assistant Profession, while making up over 12% of the general population, only 2.7% of physician assistants identify as Black or African American. So we could see there's a huge disparity there, and we'll kind of talk about that in a little bit. And then another one in a New York Times article titled How Much Racism Do You Face Every Day? They polled 101 Black teens, and those teens described over 5,600 instances of discrimination within a 2-week period. So it's obviously something that's very prevalent, both in the Black youth and I'm sure as adults. So that's just something to think about. So with that being said, I want to open it up to our panelists to kind of talk about any experiences of either overt or subtle racism that you've experienced in your life. Courtney, I know we've talked about this. If you want to maybe start us off with just something that you've gone through.
Yeah, sure. So, I had a situation where I was working at a phlebotomist in Florida, and my delegator printed out a lab for me to draw. So, I'm heading over there, and as I knock on the door, the nurse comes out of the room and she was like, "Oh, hey, can I speak to you at the nurse's station?" I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." And then she was like, "Hey, are you here to draw his blood?" I'm like, "Yeah." And then she tells me, she was like, he kind of doesn't want anybody Black drawing his blood. And, I took it as, "Oh, okay, not a problem." So, I just go back and I set it back on the table. And the delegator's like, "Hey, we needed this." I'm like, "Yeah, they don't want anybody Black drawing his blood." And he was kind of like, I don't know if he's playing, or I was like, and I said it again. He was like, oh. And then, he took me back over there. He was like, you know what, let's go talk. I'm not sure if he didn't believe me or he was in disbelief, but when we got back and we were going back to the room again, the nurse called us both over. She was like, hey, are you guys here to draw his blood? And she was like, he was like, yeah. And then he was like, she was like, okay, great. They actually don't want anybody Black in there. So it kind of has to be you. I believe he was in jail and he was a part of a group. I don't remember which group. And, I understood. And I think this was like, an awakening for him, like, oh, okay. This is like still here. And, we got back to the room. He talked to me about it, but that's one of the situations I had.
So then, Adanna, I know you've also talked about some instances on like your YouTube channel and stuff like that. Do you maybe want to share a little bit about those?
Sure. So, I mean, it was really my husband who kind of alluded to all of the racism that I faced while I was in PA school. Nothing was really overt, I guess you could say. Everything was pretty subtle and almost subjective in nature, but a lot of the things that I was doing on social media or YouTube as a pre-PA/PA student, there were other students doing it. I was just kind of like one of the only African-American and really the only African-American female doing it at the time. And I had, several people post racist things on Facebook about me, like a picture of like a slave master telling his slaves to get back to work in response to something that I had posted. There was also a lady who her friends say that she's not racist because she's married to a brown, person, someone that is Hispanic. But she threatened to call my school and talk to my director to have me kicked out of my program because she said that I was saying that I was a PA when it was literally just my moniker, Adanna the PA, which everybody on Instagram has a something the PA. So it was very like these little microaggressions, things like that, but nothing super overt, like just in my face, like talking to me one-on-one saying, I don't like you because you're Black.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I've actually had a situation like that too. I did do a little bit of YouTube, and somebody did say some very mean things, and it was nice that YouTube, blocked it out so everybody couldn't see it, and they just said affirmative action, and then they put the N-word in it. But there were things like that, and I'm sure that you've dealt with things like that also.
It's social media, and so like I think if you watch, it's Wreck-It Ralph, I think it is, where he breaks the internet and the social media queen is like, don't go to the comment section. I mean, it's so true, like you're gonna get the good and the bad in your comment section. And I've actually been doing YouTube for years prior to the Adanna PA channel, so like me and my husband, we got it all. So I was pretty acutely aware of how racist and ignorant the internet could be at times, but you kind of take it with a grain of salt and you just learn to block those things out. And I think that's part of the issue, that as African Americans and just individuals or people of color, we've kind of learned to adapt and navigate the racial culture of the world that we live in, as opposed to calling it wrong and, having people be accountable for their actions.
I agree with you, Adanna. It's same here, being social media, I have over 3 million followers on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, and you get all type of colorful things that kind of come our way. And you have to learn how to just, take it and strive. And, I block people at least 5 times a day. So, I know how to use that block button, delete button, or I leave a smart comment and let the Tony cats get them. So, and that's how I kind of deal with it, because, you know, they try to hit you low, but you've already been to low before social media started. So it's not really they can do anything to you. They just somebody that is just on the internet and they think they can hide behind their screen and say whatever they want to say. They can, but it's not going to phase you, because, you know, that's their way of just hiding behind the screen. They're not going to say it to your face. But you do get some in medicine that will do some overt racist stuff. And I've had it. I've been in medicine for 9 years. I was in orthopedic spine before I started pediatric neurosurgery. Pediatric neurosurgery, you don't really see anything because, you know, everybody's kids are in a dire strait and they need your help. So they don't really say, oh, I can't see you. But in adult medicine, they do have their choices and they do have some strong opinions that they think you, like I round on the weekends for the orthopedic spine group, and I'll go into the patient's room. And then when I walk into the patient's room and say, oh, you're going to get me up with therapy? I was like, no, I'm just checking on you. So it's automatically, you know, you look at an African-American face and you automatically think that they're not your healthcare provider. They're there as a support staff, as maybe someone to clean up the room, or you're the physical therapist or the occupational therapist. Like, no, I'm actually calling the shots and I'm taking care of you and I'm making sure you're going to survive until the next day so I can come in and check on you the next day. And so you get a lot of those overt racism. In California, there's a lot of overt, but in other states in the South are pretty, you know, they'll wear it on their sleeves. And I was in undergrad, I did 1 year at Texas Tech in Lubbock, Texas, and I had to leave the state because it was just so racist. When I was in the military, I had a lot of stuff there too. So it's a lot of stuff you see, but as you continue on your path, starting from, you know, being in elementary school all the way up to where you're at right now, you see a lot of different things and you learn to adapt to these things. And that's the way that I've treated it. And a lot of us that are African-American have treated it. We look at it and just keep going.
So I think I have had similar experiences as Tony. So working in pain management, I've gone to different offices. So one experience I had, I went to a new medical office, and every time I go to a different office, one of the medical assistants comes with me. And so the medical assistant who usually comes with me, she's a white Hispanic, but I guess she would be, correct term would be passing for a white non-Hispanic. So when we got there, the staff started speaking to her. They're like, okay, the provider goes in this room. This is what you're doing. Basically giving her all of the logistics of what's going to be happening that day and everything. And she's like, yeah, you guys kind of need to be speaking with her. She's the PA. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. And then that's when they started actually speaking to me and basically, you know, giving me the rundown. So a lot of times people do assume that someone who's Black or African-American, they aren't a provider, like Tony said. And you kind of have to like introduce yourself as a provider and kind of let them know. So that is one of the things that PAs face, or Black PAs face all the time, should I say.
So yeah, so thank you guys for sharing. So kind of to kind of jump off of that. So I was recently watching a documentary by Dr. Antonio Webb. I don't know if you guys know him, but he's a Black spinal surgeon. And one of the things that he said was that you can't be something that you don't see, referring to the fact that it's hard for Black youth to want to be healthcare providers when they grow up if they're not seeing that in the field due to the disparities that we kind of talked about earlier. So I was wondering, like, if you guys had any Black role models in healthcare growing up, and if you didn't, like, what would that have kind of meant for your healthcare journey if you did? Or like, what do you hope to be for the youth now?
I can go first on that one. So my grandfather was a pediatrician, but I wasn't really around him. And then he passed away when I was like 6 years old or so. So my role models, I didn't really have like the role models that a lot of kids normally have as far as like basketball player, rap singer, a rap star or a singer. I didn't have all those. I had my mom and my two older brothers, and they were involved in gangs, and they were my role models of what not to do. So I chose them to be my role models. And I said, I'm just going to do something that is not going to be what they're doing, because you can either get shot, stabbed, or in jail. And I didn't want none of those. So after I graduated from high school, that's when I went out to the military. And then at that point, I wanted to figure out what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And I wanted to become a pediatrician. So then my gear was going towards medical school. And then eventually I found out what was PA. And then I started at PA school. So if I would have had like somebody I can relate to that was African-American, that was in medicine, I guess around the time that I was doing all my undergrad was when ER came out, and the guy from Coming to America, Soul Glow, forgot his name, but he was the ER doc, and that was the only Black ER or Black physician on a television show. Other than that, it's been a lot of medical stuff has been, it's not Black. So it's everybody else except for Black. So you don't really get those role models. And what I'm doing now on social media is trying to stimulate and trying to show other kids or youth or whoever wants to view it that, we can be something else other than the common things of, oh, I want to become a rap star. I want to make that fast dollar so I can get that car, so I can get that girl, so I can do whatever I want with my money. And so that's where I'm trying to come out as well as teaching my daughters that is not about, trying to get money. You gotta crawl before you can get where you need to go. And that's what we here today is trying to stimulate the discussion of how can we get the youth involved and trying to become more involved in medicine, because it's a lot of us, but it's only 2% of us in PA. And then it's a little bit more than that in MD. So there's a disconnect. And, this is why we're here discussing that today.
What do you think you talked about like getting youth involved. Do you think that that's something that's on, admissions of PA schools and medical schools to admit more students who identify as Black and African American, or is this something that kind of has to come from the community, again, like we talked about, like with creating those role models and those pipeline programs? And this is for anybody to jump in and comment on.
So I think it is the pipeline programs. It's not starting when they are already in undergrad and they are trying to get out of school. They're not trying to go to medical school. They're not trying to go to PA school. They're not trying to go to nursing school. You got to start when they're in junior high school, having some type of summer program where these high school students can go and see what medicine is all about. Because, a lot of these kids, they want to go to college, but then some of them don't know how to get to college. Or like if I can take my state, for example, there's not a huge number of African-American kids coming out of South Central Los Angeles and going to a 4-year university. They go to a junior college and then eventually start working somewhere. But there's not a lot. In the South and on the East, there's a lot of kids that are matriculating into college. But it's somewhere in that disconnect where we have to have something that's going to go back and reach and pull those kids up. Because if you go to those ghettos, they're not worried about medical stuff. They're worried about what they're going to eat for dinner, what they're going to pay, how they're going to pay. The parents are worried about how they're going to pay for rent. They're not worried about, oh, this guy's here to talk about medicine. Let's listen. No, they're worried about, what we're going to eat, how we're going to keep my kids alive, how I'm going to keep police brutality away from my kids, how I'm going to shelter my kids. Those are things that are very high on the forefront. So it's a lot of this stuff that we talk about is good, stuff, but, we have to get to the root cause of why these things are there. Because I lived it, and I'm one of the ones that kind of slipped through the cracks and didn't allow it to hold me back.
So basically piggybacking off of Tony, I definitely think there should be a system in place to navigate kids, I guess, to college and then PA school, as you mentioned. I think it's just difficult because, like you said, some people aid their family. So it's like, I can't go to college because I also have to work a part-time job because I need to help my mom, or I need to help my dad, I need to do this. So a lot of people just aren't in a position where, or feel like they're not in a position to, progress or advance to one of these careers. Growing up in South Florida, it's a lot of Caribbean people and African backgrounds, as far as like Black people, should I say. And, being first generation, a lot of our parents do push, oh, be a doctor, be a nurse, be this, but we don't really have example, and just having other friends who, oh, my dad's a doctor, or my mom, she's a nurse practitioner, or this, that, and the third. A lot of times kids don't have that example of, okay, a Black person is a PA, or a Black person is a physician. And pretty much you either have to have like the wherewithal to do it yourself, or you end up slipping through the cracks. So I think there should be a system in place. It's just difficult because how would you facilitate or even create that system?
Yeah, so just like they said, when my father came to this country, he did push football on me heavy, well, sports on me heavy, and that's all I saw. I haven't seen a black doctor until I was 23 in Tallahassee, Florida. That's when I seen my first Black doctor, and it's just been football, football, football. It would mean so much to me at a younger age if I seen, some type of Black provider, something I could be. It wasn't until I couldn't play football anymore to where I had to look at, different avenues. Like, what am I going to do? Am I going to go back home? I don't want to go back home. So what am I going to do? So then, I picked, the medical field. And when you do pick the medical field, again, you don't see many Black providers, Black, PTs. But luckily, YouTube is around. So what do? I went on YouTube, and one of the people I did see was Adanna. So I would like to thank you. You are live. You were inspiration for me, because there wasn't a lot of people doing it, and you were doing it, and I seen, you look just like me. So that was inspiration. I do thank you for that. But I think we do need exposure at a young age. And I know that my university, they sometimes go to the high schools and, they kind of talk about PAs. I think they did that a couple of times. I remember seeing pictures, but I think that that's a great step in that part.
I think I just want to address something that Tony said, because I know that we're talking about like going to schools and talking, and then he was, just bringing up the fact that a lot of us as African Americans, it's really all about survival. So it's a matter of like, hey, how am I going to eat? How am I going to pay for rent? How am I going to do this? And so I feel like even when we're thinking about how would we facilitate something like this, it goes to reason that we should probably meet people where they're at. So like if I'm hungry, I'm not going to necessarily be paying attention to somebody that comes and says, oh, look, listen about this great career. It's called being a physician assistant or a physical therapist or an occupational therapist. I think it would be better suited if we can have programs in place where we go and we're like feeding people, if we're building things, we're helping them out, and at the same time talking about what we do or where we're from, you're relating to them on a more personal level. I think a lot of times when we're like, oh, let's go to the schools and talk about the kids, like my kids just learned what a PA is, and I've been talking about this for like years. And I'm like, well, what's a PA? You're a PA? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, what's that? You're like a doctor? And I'm like, I mean, I guess you can say that, but like I'm still sitting up here educating. And it's not even necessarily about them understanding like what a physician assistant is per se, but how does their mom help other people, in her day-to-day job? And then as they can see that and emulate that, then the world is their oyster, I guess you could say. It's opened up to them the possibilities that they can have as, young African-American women.
If I might jump in, I just want to open up with regards to that and trying to get this exposure. How can we as white allies help that? And how do you think we could use our resources, or just how can we help that move along forward for children?
Yeah, that's a tough one. It's just like what Adanna was saying, is that trying to meet youth where they're at. There's a lot of different youth organizations in your surrounding areas, in the different ghettos. And they do a lot of different things. There's YMCA that does things in different states. And so you can locate these different organizations of what they do within their communities, because each community has somebody that fights for them. You just have to kind of look for them. So you have to locate these groups within these communities. And a lot of African Americans, we love church. And so you can go to a church, you'll be put on spot, but you can go to a church and you can kind of get a hold of there and do like a health fair there at a church. So you get a lot of people, you get a lot of exposure to the profession, as well as getting youth involved when you go to a church and do things there, or to a barbershop, and talk about prostate cancer. So all these different ways you can kind of expose the youth, as well as African Americans, to medicine in general, because it was not too long ago where African Americans were deathly afraid of medicine. And a lot of them are still deathly afraid of medicine. And they will not get anything you want to give them. And they will rather eat themselves to death versus going to a doctor and think that they're going to get poisoned. So it's not too long ago that mindset was instilled into these different areas within the South. So you have to kind of mitigate all those misconceptions that still prevail today.
What about in the workplace? So like Fabienne, I know we've kind of talked about this in the past. How have you guys seen things like dress codes applied differently in regards to like what's considered professional for, Black healthcare workers versus white healthcare workers? If you guys just want to kind of enlighten us on some ways that's affected you.
So one of the things that I was telling you about was like, okay, even for like hairstyles. So a lot of hairstyles, or African American or Black hairstyles, people deem as unprofessional, whether that's braids, like I have in my hair right now, or dreadlocks, afros. A lot of people try to say that it's unkept, and that you should either have your hair either more slick or straight, and that's more professional. So I feel like just being conscious of different things like that, that this is just a hairstyle. This is just like, a normal way of life for certain people, and it shouldn't be made to be a big deal or spectacle, sorry. So I just feel like, I don't know, I think that we should just be more conscientious of individuality, and people should just understand that certain things aren't going to change the way you provide care to a patient, like hairstyles or certain piercings or things like that.
I
For
can't
me,
really
I haven't
speak
seen.
on it.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I can't speak on it. I mean, the hospital that I work at is like majority Black, so there's not really anything that's offered differently. We're all in scrubs, like, so I haven't seen it. Maybe as I matriculate more through my career, if I change, facilities or something like that, I might see some of those things. I know, like, there's a lot of people that always get talked to about like how tight their clothes are just because you're shaped a little bit different, but I haven't necessarily had to deal with that.
Tony, I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, I agree with Adanna. I haven't experienced anything like that. I work at two hospitals, the Children's Hospital and then Adult Hospital right across the street. And I am the only African American provider. So there's some nurses here and there, but I'm the only little dark guy running around in a bow tie, dancing with all the kids. Holla.
Yeah, I haven't I haven't witnessed that either. I've only hear, and I am kind of nervous that somebody will eventually say something about my hair because they are long locks. So, I'm really not there yet. Nobody has said anything, but I am a little worried if or when they do.
What you gonna do? What you gonna do when they say something about your hair?
I'm gonna tell them what it is. It's mine. You feel me? It's me. So take me or leave me.
I love it. So obviously a lot of the things we talk about are, some of the negative impacts in society of being Black healthcare workers, but I was wondering on kind of a more positive note, have there been any situations in medicine where you felt like you were better to take care of your patients because you were Black, as opposed to it being a detriment where it really either helped you connect or just helped you with a certain diagnosis? Like, have you guys had any experiences like that?
I mean, for me, for sure. I'm in trauma, so it's sad to say, but all of the traumas that come in as GSWs or stabbings are either African American young males or females or Hispanics. And so when we come in as the trauma PAs and I'm dealing with them in the trauma bay and then on the floor, on my next shift, it's like I connect, it's like a sister, or sometimes, I mean, I'm not that old, but I feel like a mother to some of these young men, because you're trying to like help them understand, like, yo, you were lucky, like this could have gone a completely different way. And I think as a young African American woman, just seeing them, like, I feel like, oh man, like this could literally be my brother, like this could be my aunt or my uncle. And I don't want that. And so when it comes to understanding like how maybe they react to you, depending on how you're talking to them, like me versus some of my colleagues, I feel like I'm a little bit better suited because they can relate to me a little bit more. So it's not necessarily that they respect what I'm saying, but they're more willing to listen to what I'm saying, as opposed to somebody that doesn't look like them and is trying to tell them what to do.
I agree. In Orange County, we don't have too many African Americans. So when I do see one, I'll be like, oh, what's up? But I think just the way that I'm raised, I better connect with all of my patients versus my attendings or my PA colleagues. Because I kind of know, looking at people and their struggles of how they have, if it's been a rough go for them, I can kind of relate to them and kind of know, that whatever I tell them, I have to kind of think of their background of, are they really going to listen to me? Are we going to do what I want them to do? Because I have to incorporate whatever they've already been doing. And now I got to bring in my Western medicine thought, as well as where I came from, my thought, and kind of say, okay, these are things that I want you to do. I know you're going to do this, but I still want you to do these things. You can do a little bit of what you normally do, but I want you to do a lot of this so it can help you with whatever you're going through. And I take it with me when I'm working with adults in emergency medicine, as well as working with parents with kids with hydrocephalus, brain tumors, the whole gamut.
Okay, so I think we're going to turn it over to Alexis. I think she has some pre-prepared questions, and then if time allows, we will facilitate some questions from the chat if we have enough time at the end. Otherwise, if we do end up running out of time, you guys can always reach out to Alexis or I, or I'm sure any of our panelists with additional questions. So I'll turn it over to Alexis now.
Thanks, guys. So my questions came from the student body and also faculty from Carver College of Medicine. And so I just want to throw these out. One of them, we're currently in a course where we have upstandard training. And so they're trying to give us the exposure and tools on how to combat any discrimination witnessed. So I was wondering if you guys could tell of a time if anyone around you witnessed the discrimination and stepped up to support either you or the target of the discrimination.
Well, me talking again. So I was the one that was being discriminated against because a patient, so this was a patient that not necessarily didn't get what he wanted, that Fabienne normally treats. He wanted some of that Dilaudid, and I said, no, you're not getting Dilaudid. I'm gonna give you some Tylenol, some Tramadol, and then he raised up and said, well, F you then, beep. And he was like, what you gonna do, what you gonna do? And I just like bit my tongue, and then all of my medical staff, as far as the nurses and the techs in the ER, just ran over to him. It's like, you can't be talking to anybody like that. You gotta leave, and they kicked him out. And that's where I felt prideful. Same as where, when the Black Lives Matter movement started to take more steam here in the hospital, they had a moment of silence on a Saturday in front of the hospital. They had a moment of silence in the hospital on a Friday, and then they had one over in the adult hospital. So you see a lot of these, a lot of people that don't necessarily look like you are standing up and trying to protect you. And that's key to your work environment, because you know that somebody's going to step up and help you out if somebody's trying to kick you down. And I've seen a lot of patients in the ER that, have a lot of different colorful tattoos on them that don't really like anybody else but themselves and the people that look like them. And yet I'm their provider. And they look at me with the blankest stare, and I just don't skip a beat and keep going. And so looking at those different instances, I love where I work. I don't think I'll ever leave because I know people will support me here.
Thank you for sharing. Another one is we've had some students of color that expressed that once they got admitted into the program, they felt a, quote, imposter syndrome and felt that their peers kind of saw them as hitting a diversity quota instead of equally as awesome as their peers. So I was just wondering if these were common feelings for any of you or other Black providers, and if so, what would be the most helpful way for others to counteract these opinions?
I mean, for me, I felt like imposter syndrome, but not necessarily because I was Black. It's just because PA school is hard, and you're like, man, like, how did I get in? And am I like fit enough to make it through? Because there'll be moments where you're like in class and you're taking a test, and you just sat down, and then 5 minutes later, like somebody walks up and they get out because they finished their test, and you're like still on question number 1 of 50. And you're like, well, how did that even happen? And so all of these things tend to play in your head, like, am I worthy of this? Am I, is this, like, can I make it? But I mean, I think, at the end of the day, you made it into PA school and you're there for a reason. And obviously, the admissions council, be it them making a quota or not, like they saw something in you that they wanted at their program. So, hold on to that and run with it. I think for me, when I was in PA school, my issue was that we were just like, there was 4 of us, and we were just kind of tight knit because like we could relate to each other a little bit more. And we kind of felt a little bit secluded, honestly, from the rest of our classmates. So I think it's more of a conscious effort to include your peers that don't necessarily look like you. And I think that might help as well with any imposter syndrome that they may be feeling.
All right, got another response for that. Sorry. My turn. So I'm gonna let you guys in on a little something. So I first started off at Charles Drew University, and then they went under. They lost their accreditation. So there was a bunch of us, and Charles Drew was just full of minorities of all different shapes, sizes, and colors. But a few of us uprooted and left and traveled up north to University of Washington. So 6 of us total. So 2 of us went to Seattle and 4 of us went to Spokane, Eastern Washington. And it was myself and my other classmate she was African-American from New Orleans. And then my El Salvadorian classmate, she was from LA. And then my Caucasian classmate, she was from Spokane. So she actually left Spokane and went to Charles Drew. Then Charles Drew kind of started dissolving. She talked to the people at University of Washington. They accepted 6 students. And so we went up to Washington. So for myself there at Washington, I knew everything that I went through at Drew, everything I went through in the military, everything I went through in the neighborhood that I grew up in was for a purpose. And because of that, I knew I was supposed to be where I was supposed to be, even though I was the only African-American male. And my colleague that was now with me from Charles Drew, she was the only African-American female. And us 3, our other classmate, she was just hanging out with everybody, but us 3, we literally stayed around the corner from each other. The 2 stayed together, and my wife and my daughter came up. And so we formed a support network. We had Thanksgiving meals. We had Christmas parties. So we had all these different things that kind of helped lift us all up, because we were homesick, going from Los Angeles and now to a suburb area where nobody looks like you. And if you travel across the county lines in Coeur d'Alene, nobody really wants you. So it was a lot of different things that kind of was pushing down on us, but we knew that we had a better opportunity. We had to get through this so we can get back and take care of our next patient that was waiting for us. And so every day that I am on this side of my degree, I am thankful, and I share it with everybody in the world, because I'm like, man, this is best thing since sliced bread. I don't even know when sliced bread was made. So I love what I do. And when I was in PA school, I knew I was going to be the only African-American male, because when I was in undergrad, I was the only African-American male because I was majoring in neuroscience. So there was nobody around me that looked like me. It was only people that were sitting in the quad doing different things that looked like me, that was in business, that I would stop by and say, what's up? But I knew from the get-go, as soon as I hit the ground running in undergrad, nobody looked like me, that it was going to be that way once I got to where I'm at today.
Thank you. One other one is, in healthcare, we kind of have a unique environment with superiors and then lots of support staff. And currently our class, we're students, and Cam, you too. I'm just wondering, when it comes our turn to take the role of a superior as physician assistants or physicians, could you lend any advice on how to best create a safe and inclusive environment?
Okay, so I guess I'll speak. So my superior, should I say, he's super open to critique. He basically listens to everything we all have to say. He hires a diverse staff, so we have providers of different races and ethnicities with in all of our offices. So I just think once you become a PA or a physician, you should just be open to actually hearing other people's stories, other people's perspectives, because I might take something as either being racist or prejudiced, and you being either white or Hispanic or a different race, you might not see it that way. So I think it's just best to be respectful and open to hearing others' perspective.
I agree. I'm talking again. Sorry. So,
We love it.
So, I work in surgery, and in surgery, everybody talks about everything when the patient goes to sleep. So we talk about a lot of stuff. So, and a lot of things, that get said are sometimes inappropriate, and you have to let them know that didn't sound too hot. So, and I do it all the time, and my providers are like, oh, I'm sorry about that, Tony. Or, we just joking about different things. So, or he may say something that is pertaining to surgery, but I'm like, man, that didn't sound too right. But it was just pertaining to the surgery, because we had to take off a tumor, and it was one instance where he said it was a black tie was on one part of the tumor, and then there was a white tie on a different part of the tumor. So he was saying, okay, put this in the cup, and the black is the inferior portion of the tumor, white is the superior portion of the tumor. He said black superior, white is a black's inferior, white superior. And I was like, Dr. Mahoney, that don't sound too right. So, and that was just the incident, but it was just a joke that I was just kind of bringing out of what he just said. But all my provider is very open to everything that I have to say. And we're basically like best friends, because we go do different things all the time on the weekends or during the week when we just go hiking. So we, as the only African-American male here in this hospital as a provider, a lot of people will come to me for different things that are going on within their in their areas within the hospital, and asking me questions of what they should do. And so I kind of voice my opinion on how they should handle those things.
I think that's great advice. Thank you. One last question here before we kind of wrap up. There are not that many Black applicants for PA programs. I know Iowa specifically, but I think across the board, that's something that's struggling. So I'm wondering if there are ways that we as current students can work towards increasing diversity and dismantling these barriers for applications in our institution and other institutions as well. Is there a way we can direct our energy or focus?
I think there's probably going to start being a shift of more Black applicants. Me personally, I didn't even know what a PA was until the ending of my freshman year of college. So I think now that there's being like more advocacy for the PA profession in general, you're going to have more people aware of the profession and more people seeing that, oh, there are Black PAs. Because when I initially was on Instagram, back in like 2015, 2016, there weren't really like PA pages. You couldn't go and like search PA and see like 5 or 10 different, providers that were Black as PAs. So I think now there's such a variety. Like you could see Adanna, you'll see Tony, you'll see Cam. So you can go on there and actually see, oh my gosh, there's a Black PA. I want to do that. So I think there's going to start being a shift, but of course, one of the main things I would say is just advocating for the profession and bringing more awareness to the profession to younger Black people.
I mean, I think also just in your question when you said how can we like address these barriers? I mean, you have to see what the barriers are for your particular program and any particular program. So is it a matter of, these students can't pay for the application? Is it a matter that you're just kind of, taking them out because they're at a 3.0 and you're giving your average at a 3.5? Like, you know, how are you allowing these students to even be heard or be seen in an interview? And I think that's like the toughest part. A lot of, you know, us as African Americans, like for me, just in general, like when I went to undergrad, it was cool. I was on the medicine track, but like freshman year, it was like whatever, you know, it was like a wash. Sophomore year, I was doing pretty good. Junior year, kind of cool. But you're sitting up here and you're making these adjustments because you're kind of figuring yourself out. You're figuring out what's going on. But at the same time, there are different things that take a hit. And so you're not seeing, like Fabienne said, you know, you don't see what it takes to be a PA, like what are all the stats. So I think now that we have all of these various different options for these students to figure out, well, what do I need to do to actually become a PA? They can hit these marks because, you know, it's sad to say, but I mean, as Caucasians, you know physicians, you know physician assistants, you have people who have gone there before and who can tell you, yeah, you know what, Austin, like this is what you should do. Or I know Dr. So-and-so and he's on the board of this PA school. Let me introduce you to them. So I think there are a lot of things that just systemically that puts up barriers for African Americans, not only to apply, but also to get accepted into PA school. And so if you're a school that you're really actually trying to get diversity in, you're trying to get providers that look like the patient population that they're gonna see, you have to look internally and see, all right, well, is there anything that we're doing that are just kind of phasing some of these applicants out, and then make those necessary adjustments.
Great, thank you. We just have one question from the chat that I want to throw out specifically for you, Cam. What is it like going to an HBCU PA program?
Man, to be honest, it actually feels good, man. I think we have, 11 to 12 African-American students and two Indian ones, two Hispanic ones. It's just very diverse, and it's honestly a good feeling. You know, I see Black PA. I think here is when I seen my first Black PA, which is, you know, which is crazy. Our chair, Dr. Maxwell, you know, it's a good feeling. It's a good feeling, and I am happy that I found this school.
Awesome, I'm glad to hear. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming, and panelists, thank you for your advice and your sharing your experiences with us. I hope that the audience enjoyed it, and if you have any further questions, please reach out to Austin or I, or any of the panelists. We have listed their @ for Instagram as well. Thank you.
Yeah, and if I just want to add one quick thing, and then I'll let the panelists say, you know, any closing words that they want to say or takeaways from events like this. But if anyone wants more resources about, you know, different books to read, podcasts to listen to, accounts to follow, like Alexis said, do not hesitate to reach out. You know, this isn't meant to be a 1-hour event where you come to this and you learn everything that you need to know about what it's like to be a Black healthcare provider. You know, this is really meant to be a jumping point to kind of open your eyes, and then it's really important to go out and continue to do that research. So with that being said, if any of the panelists want to say any closing remarks, and then we'll wrap things up.
I see you. All right. So my Jerry Springer final thoughts. All right. So, you know, it's just like what Austin is saying. You know, you have to be willing to do the work. You know, being African American and being a provider that can potentially go into a room and be hated on before you even open up your mouth. It's a very daunting experience on your first try, but after you get familiar, you're like, oh, here I go in there. They don't want to see me. Oh, well, sorry. They don't want to see me. You write the note. So you have to be able to know the experience that we kind of go through. It's kind of hard to figure these things out, but And then we have to figure out, just like Adanna said, is trying to understand how do we sell a PA to African Americans, or how is the programs, how their guidelines on just getting other students in, and if they're African American, how they get them in, you know, because a lot of African Americans look towards MD or DO and haven't really crossed over to PA yet because they don't really know about PAs. But as the years that keep going by since I've been a PA, there's more PA programs and there's more people on social media that's showing what PAs are and of African American descent. So as long as we can expose everybody to what's going on, how we can be a difference in the medical profession and try to mitigate those areas of diversity or disparities within the communities, I think we can show a lot of strength in trying to bring us to the forefront and trying to pick up our society, because sometimes we are lacking. You know, you go to a provider and nobody looks like you as a patient, you know, so you don't really accept what they're going to give you.
What he said.
You can follow me on Instagram at Adanna PA.
Shameless plug.
All right. Well, with that, I'd like to thank you guys, everybody who viewed this, and you guys for participating. And like Adanna said, and we said, make sure to check out all of their awesome social media accounts in the description of the YouTube video. They're all posting awesome content, and you could follow their journeys through being a PA, and just not even just being a PA, just being cool people. So thank you guys, and hopefully you have a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, guys.
I'm about to go enjoy the sun back out in California. Sorry.
Bye, everyone. Have
Bye,
a good
guys.
night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.